Okay, good. Okay, hi everybody. My name is Dan Miroff, and I'm a professor of civil engineering at Florida Atlantic University. And I'm also the director of the Laboratories for Engineered Environmental Solutions. And I also work with the Center for Water Resiliency and Risk Reduction, which is CWR3. And I'm here to talk to you about an Eco Broward grant that we got awarded about a year and a half ago. And the project is funded by the Community Foundation of Broward. And the goal of the project is to interact with 200 homeowners. So we've got 18 today, but we'll get to that 200 in a moment. And the goal is to improve the neighborhood level resilience on a sustainable basis and reduce in order to reduce the flood insurance premiums that you pay. Most of you in this neighborhood have required to have flood insurance, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. And also to improve energy conservation and improve water quality. And as part of the grant, I have to give a shout out to all the different funds within the grant that help fund the project. So those are on the screen there. And then at the bottom is the link to my website, which talks more about this project. If you have a chance to take a screenshot, if not, there'll be more opportunities for that. So to that end, we are planning to deliver 3 educational modules. The first one is today. The first one is called Coastal Resilience, Introduction to Flood Risk Management and Coastal Climate Resilience. And then the second one, which we haven't scheduled yet, is the Energy Conservation module. And the third one will be focused on water quality. So for the first one, we're going to introduce some concepts of community resilience and flood risk reduction and give some examples of mitigation strategies, and then discuss a solution or two, and also introduce the Neighborhood Resilience Ambassador Program. So most of the RioVista community is in the 100-year flood zone. That's zone AE and AH for some of you that speak that lingo, which means there's a high risk for the 1% annual chance of flooding. And that flood elevation is around 5 to 7 feet. And of course, that carries a mandatory flood insurance requirement. And then some of the neighborhood is in zone X, which has a moderate flood risk, which does not require. So it's outside of the special flood hazard zone. I don't know how many of you are aware of the community rating system, but I'm sure many of you know that the regular homeowner insurance policy does not cover damage from floods, and that's why you carry a separate flood insurance. And as of this year, Fort Lauderdale has 42,000 flood insurance policies. Some of them are in this neighborhood, many of them. So now one of the factors that controls the premium, which is what you pay for flood insurance, it depends on what the community is rated at in the community rating system. So if you lived in unincorporated Broward County, which Broward County carries a CRS classification of 6, and you were in the special flood hazard zone, you would receive a 20% discount on your flood insurance. I think this community is in the city of Fort Lauderdale, which only carries a CRS rating of 7. So if you're in the special flood hazard zone, AE and AH, you get a 15% discount on the flood insurance, and those outside who carry flood insurance would be only at 5%. So there is a reason why a lot of the communities, especially in Southeast Florida, are not at a CRS rating of 4 or lower. And that's because they have not done a watershed master plan. So the FEMA and the Florida Division of Emergency Management hired FAU to create an easier way to build a watershed master plan. So we actually did one for Broward County, and we're working with them on a new grant program to be able to get below a score of 4, which would increase the discount to 30% or double the discount that you currently are having. And of course, we'd like to work with the city of Fort Lauderdale as well to move them down to a score below 4. And also, if they work with us to do educational programming, kind of like what I'm doing right now, they also get more points, and then that drives the rating system class lower and improves the discount. So we're hoping to be able to get your discount a lot lower. If we do get it down to the 4, which is a 30% discount on the premium, that would translate to a savings of $9 million per year for all the policyholders in Fort Lauderdale, for example. Now, flooding can occur in a variety of different ways. Of course, at this time of the year, we are worried about king tides. I hope that you haven't had any major impacts from the first few events. And also, we just had the full moon event, which was a couple nights ago. The predicted heights for these are published by NOAA, and you could go to a website and find them. But they can get worse than predicted if the winds are out of the east, or there's a storm offshore, or if we have a front moving in, for example. So the city has a hotline to help report those flooding incidents, and that number's on the screen. It's going to come up several times. Hopefully you have that number programmed into your cell phone, or at least on your refrigerator or something like that. And just so you know, the threshold for flooding is around 1.3 to 1.5 feet for flood zone AE. If you do have flood insurance or you're not sure about carrying coverage, FEMA has a helpful app that you can download. It's called the Flood Smart tool, and the link there is on the screen. Just 1 inch of water can cause $25,000 of damage to your home. It actually did happen to me in July, but it wasn't caused by flooding. It was caused by plumbing. But it was 1 inch, and it went more than $25,000 of damage to the kitchen. Besides, in this app, when you download it, you can select the type of house that you have, and you can select the type of flooding that you might expect to see based on what flood insurance you carry. And you can create a scenario, and it will tell you kind of what out-of-pocket expenses you would have to pay to return to the pre-loss value of your home. Now, some people, they think that they should carry a high deductible because they think it will never happen. But of course, you know that the 100-year flood events are now happening annually instead of once every 100 years. So it's a little different story than when we thought from the past. And some people just purchase flood insurance because it was required by the bank when they got the mortgage or when they got a home improvement loan. But those policies don't cover the contents. They usually cover the building structure. And there's usually more damage to your contents than there is to the structure. So if you're not sure, you should check to see if you have contents coverage. You don't want to wait until after you have a loss to figure out you don't have contents coverage. And of course, you don't want to wait until the next flood to buy insurance, because for every case, there's a 30-day waiting period before your coverage takes into effect. Now, there are some hidden risks outside your home that can lead to flooding, and we put together some mitigation measures here in this module here for you in the next few minutes. And first of all, you should know what your flood risk is for your personal address. So to do that, you can go to the FEMA website. The Map Service Center website is on the screen, msc.fema.gov. And you can enter your address there, and you'll be able to download your FIRMET map. Now, FIRM stands for the Flood Insurance Rate Map. It will tell you important information like what is your base flood elevation. And that's the height of which it's expected the 1 in 100-year storm event will put the water at your address. And of course, like I mentioned before, the 1 in 100-year storm event is happening. And that's because of climate change and sea level rise, depending on your property and your neighbors. Another important step, like we mentioned earlier, is to get the flood insurance. And then, of course, there are some key actions that we think will help prepare you for the worst while you pray for the best. All right, so one of those things is to protect your home contents is to know how to shut off your power and your gas if you have gas. It's likely that those are below the base flood elevation. And we'll talk more about elevating utilities in a moment. During the storm or the flood event, you might lose power. And when the power comes back on, you could potentially damage all of your appliances or have a power surge. So it's important to know how to shut off the power so that you can turn it back on safely. You may have multiple breaker boxes as well in your home, depending on how much stuff you have going on. And also shutting off the gas at the valve can help limit the explosive hazard when the gas comes back on. Now, also to minimize potential losses, another easy thing to do is to mark your breaker box on which circuits are floodable. So for example, it feels safe to turn back on the power. You want air conditioning, right? You want to watch TV, see what's going on. And those are on the second floor perhaps. But the stuff on the first floor needs to remain off because there's still water in the house, that kind of stuff. So you'd want to be able to mark your box to be able to know which ones are which. During the event or right before, it's not a good time to be testing all the breakers. You can also don't have to shut off the entire house, so you can have key things like your refrigerator and stuff like that that may be above the flood elevation that's still working. Now, you should also be able to check your building envelope, that's the outside, for potential water entry points like doors and garage vents and dryer vents and sliding glass doors and those kind of things. A lot of openings can allow water in. And then you can protect them with low walls or temporary shields like sandbags. You can also install a floor drain plug or a standpipe or a one-way check valve, similar to what we do to try to keep the tides out. And also to prevent sewer backups from flooding as well. I mentioned earlier another way that is potentially helpful is to elevate your utility connections. So on the left-hand side, you see the water heater on the floor, and you see an air conditioner and the gas hookup on the outside of the house on the ground level, right? So that if the base flood elevation is at 5 feet, the ground level is at 3 feet. That means there's 2 feet of water in your air conditioning unit. It's not going to work as it was designed, right? So on the right-hand side of the screen, I'll try to use my mouse. There we go. So here you see the water heater is elevated above the base flood elevation. So if there's water in the house, it won't interfere with your hot water. And then similarly here, the air conditioning unit is elevated so that, again, if there's water on the outside of the house, and this is your base flood elevation here, that you'll still have air conditioning. Now, if you're going to replace any of these utilities like the electrical panel, propane tanks, sockets, appliances, water heaters, HVAC, that's the heating, ventilation, and air conditioning units. If you're going to replace those because they're older than, like, say, 15 years, then instead of just buying a more efficient unit and you can ask the installer to elevate the unit above the flood elevation like we have shown here. Normally, that's built into the cost, and the contractor will just take that. If you don't ask for it, the contractor will just take that and turn it into profit. So if you read the fine print, they will elevate that as included in the price of installation, typically. And then similarly, like with the hot water heater, you might figure out it's time to replace it. You know, it's more than 10 years old, let's say. You can ask the installer to elevate that unit as well. Or, you know, if you have, like I do, I have a 3 and a 4-year-old. They're about to get where they need to take multiple showers a day and start dating and stuff like that. So we need to get a bigger water heater. So this is the time we're going to need to elevate that above the base flood elevation. All right, so I want to also remind you that if you do have water in your house, one of the most expensive things will be to replace all the drywall. So this actually did happen to me in the flood that happened in my house recently. And what we're going to do is replace the drywall, which just a little bit of water, 1 inch, ended up ruining almost $10,000 worth of drywall. So I'm going to replace that with the green board, which is the same type of drywall you'd use in a bathroom. So it's water resistant. And again, we have another flood situation, I won't have to end up replacing the drywall. If, you know, my wife doesn't like the type of carpet we have, we're going to rip out the carpet, of course, but we're not going to replace it with new carpet, because that's also going to go bad when we have a flood. So we're going to replace it with something waterproof like tile. And if you are going to do any remodeling, you should ask your contractor to install flood resistant materials. And of course, that's going to help with the major water damage. And if you're carrying a large deductible, it's going to help out there too. Now, if you do experience flooding on your street, there's a couple of things that you should think about. You want to keep the swales in the yards and other areas clear of debris so water can drain. So you see in the picture, we took out the garbage can and we put it right in the path of the water. So we create a little dam, which makes it more difficult for water to drain. Now it pools up and causes a flooding issue. So you see on the right-hand picture, I'll put my mouse right there, where we have moved the can off of the drainage structure so they can flow freely. Also, while you're out walking the dog, take note of the storm drain. If it looks like the one in the picture here, we got a problem. In other communities, we've talked about adopt a drain program where we try to keep those drains clean. Obviously, if they're clean, water can get in, it won't pool up, and it won't cause as much flooding damage. Once they're full and they don't work, no amount of adopt a drain techniques will help at that point. But if you have a storm drain nearby your property, you want to make sure that you try to keep pollutants and other chemicals out of the storm drain. So for example, it's raining and you want to throw away some of your old paints or things like that. You don't put them out here. You have to take them directly to a transfer station or a landfill that will accept it, because the garbage pickup will not take those materials. Then they'll leave them there. And during the rain, their contents might pour out and go into the storm drains. That's another water quality issue. And there's that phone number again at the bottom. If you do see a flooding issue and it's something that you don't feel comfortable dealing with, you can call the city. It's 24 hours. They'll hopefully come out and take care of it right there. In my community, we're not allowed to keep our garbage cans out more than 12 hours before pickup. So here's what happens if there's a big rain event and we left them out and the contents fall out and they float downstream, right? So we want to remove the waste bins as soon as possible and keep them high and dry until it's time for them to get picked up so their contents don't get released. A little bit more advanced project that you might be able to do at your home is installing a system that can allow water to flow through the lower level of the home and drain out. And so here I've shown on the picture a flood vent that can be installed in a garage. Of course, that means the garage is designed to be flooded. So you can't have stuff that you don't want to lose on the floor of the garage. Of course, I don't have to tell you to avoid walking through floodwaters, because if the water's this high, that means the manholes are underwater, which means the contents of the manhole, which are usually the sewers, is now floating in the streets as well. So that could be a health hazard. You should try to avoid driving through those flooded areas. You don't know if it's salt water, and that could damage your vehicle, of course. And of course, if it's already flooding and you are driving to get home or to escape the floodwaters, you might not be able to see the street striping because it's underwater. And some communities are really close to a canal, so you might not be able to tell where there's land and water. So I know the city has installed flood delineators, which are poles that tell you where there's solid land underneath the water, and so that you don't drive into a canal. And then that's really, really bad for your car and of course for yourself. Additionally, you might see during, we'd be able to tell that the flood event is happening. We have a little bit of forenotice. The city does install no wake zone signs on roads. So it requires you to drive less than 5 miles an hour to stop making waves that could slosh into somebody's house. Like in this case, if you're driving around this corner at more than 5 miles an hour, it's very likely that you could throw that water into that person's home. You would at least damage their landscaping and possibly their property and the contents. Now, if you are planning on making any major renovations, like regrading your lot or fixing the property drainage or building some type of barrier like a flood wall to stop flood water from entering the building, or if you're planning on elevating your home, before you make any changes, it's advisable to contact the city. Sometimes your contractor will tell you, man, you can avoid the permitting process because it takes too long, or it costs extra money, or it's going to double the cost. None of those things are true. The inspector's on your side. They're there to protect your interests, and they can also help by providing you information about grants that they have available to help fund those changes that you're planning to make. And here on the screen is the phone number to call the City of Fort Lauderdale's Department of Sustainable Development if you are in the process of doing some type of major renovation like we talked about. Now, one more tidbit. Do you know that if you have the National Flood Insurance Program policy, you are eligible for up to $1,000 to purchase supplies like tarps, sandbags, plastic sheeting, and moving and storage expenses, including the labor to do any of those items and install them? All you need to do is you start a flood loss avoidance claim. There's no deductible on it. It's a straight up reimbursement. So you have with your policy number and your receipts that have the dates on them, and a record of the time that you spent working on those if you're going to claim the labor charges, you're eligible for this $1,000. The best time to do that is not during the wet season. So we're at the end of the wet season coming up, so this is a good time to start thinking about doing this for next year. You can also sign up for email updates from FEMA and other related agencies that can help you during a disaster. If you go to this website, public.govdelivery.com, and they'll go directly to your email or to your phone, depending on what information you list there. And it will help you with keeping up to date with the latest information on how to protect your home and your loved ones during an emergency. So as part of this project, the FAU team will provide technical assistance for you as you contemplate any flood insurance mitigation measures. The team consists of me. I'm Dr. Dan. You already know who I am, right? So the others on the team are Dr. Polsky. He's the director of the Florida Center for Environmental Studies, and he's based in the Davie campus of FAU. And Dr. Sharmeen Youssef is from the Department of Architecture, and she's based in the Fort Lauderdale campus. And she's an expert on building energy simulation. So you can feel free to contact me, and I'll give you my information in just a moment. And we can help you with flood risk inspections, energy audits, or technical assistance to help you make an informed decision using any of our variety of building technologies and tools and modeling. So before I finish today, I want to remind you about the Neighborhood Resilience Ambassador Program. The ambassadors will be selected from everyone who completes the 3 educational modules. The first one is today. Now, you might be asking to yourself, what do these ambassadors actually do? So that's on the screen. First, they will identify other active community members that can work together with you as the community champion to lead them into action. They'll also identify projects to measurably improve neighborhood resiliency or energy conservation or water quality, either in individual properties or groups of properties or community-owned or shared spaces. And they'll also work to help obtain the resources to implement those mitigation measures. And of course, we have available as part of this project free technical assistance provided by the FAU project team, which I just mentioned to you a moment ago. And these ambassadors will report the results of their projects as part of the 3rd module. So we have module 1, which is today, module 2A and B coming up. And then module 3 is the ambassadors will talk about which projects they implemented and how they worked out. And as a result, they will receive a modest stipend. But the best part is they get to learn how to help their neighbors and themselves to save money, to help be more resilient in an emergency, and also to reduce their energy bill and improve water quality. So don't forget to stay tuned for module 2A, which is focused on energy efficiency, and module 2B, which is focused on water quality. And I will be sending out certificates that look just like this, certificates of completion for module 1, to anyone who attended today and also completes the quiz. What quiz? Did I forget to mention the quiz? Okay, are you ready for the quiz? Since I can't see your face, I'll say that's yes. So here it is. It's really simple. Hopefully you are not too distracted doing multiple things during this Zoom call. All you have to do is list one mitigation strategy that you learned today that you can do to make you or your community more resilient to flooding, and then send your answer to me in an email. My email is listed there, dmiroff@fau.edu. And then I'll send you your very own electric copy of the certificate of completion for Module 1. Now, please don't forget to spell your name out completely and correctly the way you want it spelled on the certificate. And of course, provide me with your home address. I'll leave that email up for a second more, and then I'll transition it to my business card. So this is my business card. It has my email address on it that you just saw. And it also has my cell phone number, so you can feel free to either text or send me a call. And of course, it was my pleasure to talk with you today, and I look forward to hearing from all of you.